everyone, how are you? My name is Ryan Hajjar. I'm Director of Client Partnerships at MMS. Welcome everybody here. I'm going to be talking about the future of content. But before I do, I just want to see a raise of hands if anybody in the room is under the age of 30 by any chance. Great. So no, it makes it a bit easier because at least a lot of you would relate to the first part of the presentation that I'm going to go through, and I don't need to worry about translating from English into any TikTok dance or anything to communicate with the younger audiences. Sorry. Technical glitch. I don't know any of them. Okay, I mean, I guess I can start and the slides will come in. So talking about the future of content, I just want to go a bit back in time, if you want, or back in history, just to talk about how the landscape has evolved in the region over here. So if a lot of you remember, back in the day, it was quite straightforward. We had a couple of TV stations, local terrestrial stations. There was not much entertainment for people to do, so a lot of people were tuned to TV. A lot of people were tuned to the content that was available on those TV stations. And then as time progressed in the early 90s, mid-90s, satellite stations popping up. MBC was launched in 91, so 30 years ago. Local Lebanese and Egyptian stations started becoming broadcasted on Pan-Arab TV, and that started changing the face and the game of content. Viewers had a lot more exposure to content that they had never seen before. So different types of entertainment shows, different types of gaming shows, different type of content altogether, even daring content. I mean, back in the day, Star Academy was seen as completely daring content, which today for us, it doesn't seem that much. Sorry, I just need to... Cool. So with all these satellite stations popping up, again, people start getting exposed to a lot of different types of content. Cable TV as well came into play, so a lot of people started getting exposed to Western entertainment, sports content as well. And then as we progressed to the mid-2000s, the digital boom came. All the social players started popping up. It provided different forms of entertainment for a lot of people in Saudi, a lot of people in the UAE. And that's where as well there was a complete change in the entire landscape, right? So how did this also impact media planning? I come from an agency background as well, so I also remember obviously how things used to be done. It was, again, quite straightforward, 2-3 TV stations, optimize our TV plan, pick the programs that people used to watch. Measurement was also straightforward. And then we would complement it by a print plan or a radio plan or an outdoor plan. I mean, even back then, we used to have incremental reach formulas of TV plus print. And now that's evolved to TV plus video, if you want. And then as time progressed as well, digital popped up. So it drove a lot more challenges, but opportunities at the same time when it came to media planning. How do you start building the most optimal plan by integrating the different platforms together? What is my unduplicated reach, and so on and so forth. But the one underlying factor across all these different touch points between TV, digital, even the likes of print and radio was one common thing, which was the content. And this is what people and audiences were consuming. So it was extremely important, and it still is important, to make sure that the type of content and the quality of content continues to surpass and continues to meet expectations of audiences. Because at the end of the day, the audience is the center of everything. The audience decides what to watch, when to watch, with who to watch as well. So we talked about, from a landscape and planning point of view, digital when it came to change. Now, obviously from a digitization, that continues and to change a lot of things. And it is one of the main causes of where we are today, right? So digital enhanced everything from content creation, making it a lot easier for clients and agencies to produce quick content, to be applicable for the likes of Snap and TikTok and things like that, versus the traditional way of just creating content in a linear way. technology also made sure that everybody, and I guess today mostly everybody, has access to the internet, right? You have fiber optics coming up, you have 5G coming up, which makes it a lot quicker for people to access the internet, and also from a cost perspective, a lot cheaper, giving a lot more people a lot more access to easy internet, if you want. And that also led, if you want, to the point where streaming services started popping up. So you have the likes of Shahid in the region over here. You have the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime as well, globally coming in locally, where a lot of people have access to those platforms. And this is, from my perspective as well, one of the most important, or one of the key changes that we've seen taking place in the last 2 years, and will continue to take place. Again, audiences don't want to be tied to a certain time. They want to have the flexibility to watch different types of content on different platforms, and the likes of the VOD platforms gives that opportunity to the audiences. Now, obviously, there are also challenges, in my opinion, in everything that is booming and growing and so on. So if we take the streaming services, which are headed towards the right direction, you get to a point where it impacts the way clients consume media and the way that agencies plan for client campaigns, and also to a point where the consumer has multiple choices to choose from. So if you take a market like the US, today they're at almost 300 different streaming services. So you had the same thing with TV stations, where there were multiple or hundreds of TV stations. Now you have the same thing from a streaming perspective. So it gets to a point where users need to now subscribe to not only 1 or 2 services, but they need to subscribe probably to 10 or 15 different services. That puts a lot of burden and pressure on the consumer as well, because it's an increased cost for them to be subscribed to every single platform out there. The other challenge is, from a publisher perspective, is how do you manage the competition? Everybody's creating content, and everybody's fighting for content to make sure that they produce the right content for the users, for them. But at the end of the day, that still creates a lot of pressure from a revenue perspective. It creates a lot of competition. Excuse me. And what we've seen, or what we would probably expect to come in the future as well, is talks about acquisitions and mergers. So again, if you take the US as an example and take a company like Disney. Disney today owns Hulu, ABC Network, Marvel, Pixar, and ESPN, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a huge network. And one of the ways to make sure that these platforms either survive or grow is to make sure that they need to rely on big partnerships and consolidations of different players. We saw an example over here. It's ages ago, but you have Orbit and Showtime. They also merged as a network to make sure that they survive and they continue to grow. So the next thing from a trends perspective as well is interactivity of content. So streaming services need to make sure that obviously they have the right content in play. If you take Netflix as an example, in terms of interactivity, they created a show where users can actually opt in and make sure that they engage in the next episode's content. And that's a huge example of how you drive interactivity with streaming platforms. And in my opinion, this is something that engages the audiences more. It makes sure that people are tuned in a lot more, and is one of the future things that we can probably see more and more, and not just that one example. Another example of interactivity, which we're seeing as well and will continue to come up, is virtual reality, right? So how do you embed the consumer within the content rather than them just watching the content and seeing it from their screen? That is another thing that will definitely be a game changer, in the sense of people interacting with the actors, interacting with brands as well, and gives new opportunities for clients to integrate their brands within programs. Another thing from an interactivity point of view is shoppable media, right? So we've seen during the lockdown of COVID how commerce took a huge boom and everything grew from a digital perspective. And commerce was such a big thing, and it will continue to be a big thing, and definitely is not going to slow down, is how do you integrate your brands as well within pieces of content where people can easily, from that content, have access to buy that product. It creates a seamless user experience, and it also makes sure that the brand is being integrated within a show in the right way to give the user the chance to purchase that product, for example. And then if we look at other points, those were my two main points in terms of what the future would look like from a content perspective. There's a lot of focus on streaming, a lot of focus on interactivity. And then other key points would be, sorry, I have streaming over here. So we don't see streaming as it's slowing down. I think in the region over here, there's only a couple. Like I said, in the US, you already have 300. So there's only growth opportunities for existing and for new players to come into play. The key thing over here, and I mentioned it before, is what is centered around the audience. Understanding what type of content the audience wants to see, for publishers to be able to know what content to create for them to keep them on board. Another point within streaming as well is live TV. Nothing is going to beat live TV, right? If you're going to watch a sports game, you're going to want to watch it live. Nobody's going to want to watch a recorded game. If you're going to watch a live event, there's that element of watching something live rather than watching it recorded. So live TV, from my perspective as well, will continue to dominate, will continue to grow. And if you look at the likes of Shahid, for example, you can actually watch live streaming on a streaming platform. So it basically tackles two points with one stone. Also linked to streaming is personalization. So today, when you log onto a streaming platform, your homepage is going to be different than your wife's homepage or your husband's homepage. And this is extremely key because what platforms will do is use your view history data, will use your search history data to make sure that they deliver the content that you want to see. And the reason that that's being done is to make sure that you stay engaged with the content, you stay engaged with the platform, and you even come back to the platform to watch more. So personalization will continue to grow, and this will help, again, with platforms to develop the right content based on your search history and based on your view history to make sure that the right content is not only being served to you, but also eventually being produced for you as a user. I had to put this in here. So the metaverse is obviously started to being discussed recently, and I'm sure you've all seen Facebook's announcement. But metaverse is, I put it as a future outlook. I don't think we would see anything in 2022, but it's definitely something that's going to be started to talk about a lot in terms of how you would be immersed within a metaverse or within a society or within an environment, and how can you as clients produce and be part of that metaverse, and how can publishers as well be part of that. So I think from a metaverse perspective, it's going to be extremely exciting, probably a bit too soon to talk about, but maybe we'd have this discussion a year down the line to talk about 2024 predictions or 23 predictions. We talked about shoppable media, but I'll just touch on it again as well. It's how you make a seamless process for users to interact with a brand, see how it's being used within a specific content, and how that turns into a direct buy, if you want. One of the last few things is brand-led content integration. So we talked about the power of digital and the speed of digital, giving users and clients the opportunity to create content and different forms of content. I mean, one of the examples I've seen a couple of years ago is a big multinational actually produced a piece of content from a mobile phone in their office, which ran on social media. I mean, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you would have never heard of that. You would have to go through your typical agency route, brief, pay a lot of money to make sure that gets done. But again, with content and with the accessibility of anybody able to do that, brands also need to look on terms of how they understand their audiences. Every platform has a different type of content that needs to work for them. You can't, and we've known this for a couple of years now, you can't use the same piece of content across different platforms. So clients need to understand what's receptive for audiences, what time of day are they receptive to certain messages, with the different formats that need to be used across the different platforms. And this is an important point just to make sure that the right communication happens during the campaign process to make sure that the receptivity is high for audiences. And finally, I don't think we can go through anything without talking about measurement in the region over here. We've been talking about TV measurement for probably before I was born, and it's still being a topic of discussion, and it still will be a topic of discussion. But I think given everything that we're seeing from a streaming perspective, from a data perspective, we would probably see a shift from panel data and household data to a lot more audience inferred data. So you have all that data from the streaming services, you know what audiences are watching. You're able to eventually drive a measurement agenda or a measurement roadmap on a specific audience rather than on a panel or rather on a sample size of a population. And I think this would also be extremely key because it links everything together. The type of content that needs to be created for who, the genre, the types of actors, and so on and so forth. And yes, that's pretty much it from my end. Thank you.